Are Lang Jushogi, Leland Amjila da said Diki, that Dundalima, Shubere, Jesada Dunda Karesana, Zugi, Setelia, and Echi, Nuji, and King, Chi, King and Pache, Kande, Kanga Junior Kanga Chavana, the Nekanga TV Kabla, and the Kanga Chasa, Yawanga Miki, Leda. Nyomo Batile Chumare, Tiangana, Zawa, and the ranches in some of the Chumares, just another Leda, Nyomo Betibu, that Gusta Savicella, Tibumi, Barakayo Mares, but then the negative give me Mahombana, Tunganyomo Chagores, Betush, sometimes sim, Makiba Machiba Dush, sometimes, Dine, and Dushine, and Jesada, Dine, Zata, ranches in it. 중요하게 강아차사 란치진 될때 중국도 제사다 란치진데 방고도 란치 제사 란치진들 방방고 대방백에 타별다 현재 받은 물로디 냠는 지인 세배 삼도 다베나 당한쪽에 강아디게 네 어다동아 당랭이 세배 냠는 자고래 안에 지금 안랑라 강아 준비 갑라 강아 치리 갑라 셈마기 바짐 매바제 근데 마기비 잡려야 아니先来判别这边先将理解了说公明去，那这个解脱为因咋，那那经验，那来讲出来的就话写的用过来写的，我都学不了样子。
So good afternoon. So this morning we looked at the second point, the second sub-point within the third, transforming adversity into the path to enlightenment, namely thrust all the blame onto the single source. Thrusting blame refers to when one experiences an adversity, whether from something outside of oneself or within. Any kind of adversity one experiences, recognize this has come about in dependence on past karmic imprints ripening now, and those karmic imprints have as their root cause the self-cherishing mind. So this is what in particular we're looking at, that we are to therefore blame the source of all our suffering on the self-cherishing mind, and that then leads to the recommitting to strive to abandon the self-cherishing mind through cultivating the other cherishing mind. And one, through this way of thinking, keeps one's mind positive through being guided by love and compassion, even in the face of adversity, and thereby being guided by love and compassion, one transforms any adverse circumstance into the path to enlightenment. In other words, one takes an adverse circumstance and instead of responding in an afflicted way, accumulates virtue which will lead to Buddhahood.
먼저 디시 쇼에 되는 슈바레 되네기 갑로다 란치진 로도 고레시디 안에 안저 삼나나 카리오스노 오다 란치진 로도 고나 랑게 랑레 제바 마진바 랑게 랑레 제와 메바 제고도 디나 기디나 랑이 강아 체야다 랑마지와 랑로 통조 다야의 차이도 선배 삼노지 용시바레스 되네 마레스 제나당 언저 랑제 받은 물로도 도르체네 안가르션 현제 받은 거레스 현리 디기도다 현리 펜바섬 땅 거레스 제나다 디니게 현리 펜도 주원자 현리 펜도 주발라 랑 안에 셈을 흘려다 쇠베기보다 안에 지게 디게 류 야보지 매바네 현리 펜도 주투마 제나 현리 펜도 주비에 된다라 아니가 지 수부디게 데보고야다 데네 수부디고 고야려야 안에 최대 칼라상 가리네 지금 고야 지게 안 되네게 소소 안에지 예수자야 예수 지가 셈을 흘려져야당 파서 예수자야당 공생 따야라서 버티서 쳐서 미 소수기 류다 지 수보디 야고 여바다 되네 있는 게 샹라 판도 주고 되면은 게 샹라 판도 주고 말에 개위 냠는데 제투고 말에 제가 되네서 수보 내바다 강한테베 디 셈을 맞기가 차와는 게 Chevana Yamna Yabuchi Mar, Shane Pember to Mar Jesa Dinez, Shane Pember to the Chidu, and in Dindala, Kalasagi, Duro Yabukunga, Sangre Chivi, Trading Chivi, and Nisika, similar Chivi, Chiati Chasa, Dus Chevina, the Rang cheesing you tone, Aki would some tone, give down the Lele Chevina. Shane Pembig, sometimes Shane Penny Dondala, and the teacher to Lelegiginada, Donna Lelegiba to Brechi Bacharwa. In another, Unol Mason Chig Shane Pembe some Natare. Digi Pemba the mother Gavano Gavasa Gore. Rang Jebas big some digitone, Lelejevana, Shenda Chigi Shengi, there's never a position, Lamsang Corona, and Simba you a child in Yorba, says the Divasa again in Iora. Says the Dineza, Dinilla, Simba in Yamna Chinadi. She ain't ever seen some of the round kept on a word, Dondala, that's a shame. Penny somebody, Simjan Tamjo Dunga, Jada, Simjan Tamjo, Digi, Dondalia, Yamlan Jedu, somebody, Horosangi, Tanya, Simba Kibur, Dunga, Chung, the Nibajan, getting a Devana thing in a Devade, the hot topium gore. Simjan Tamje Dunga, Majava in there. Korong Yams Limbig, Yamling Channel, or a yard to watch. Is that some lodi, she ended somebody there, don't I keep Sunday round the gores. Then and then some lodi, Ranganya Pendigo, Rang some gore, the Shan, some gore, Shan, Rangi Dondala, Rang kept on the Shan, Garcianache, Gangachena, Hala kept on going around Digi, some done. Some lo Rang Digi to Veke, some Shukchimudi, and Biju Jigorte, Digi. Devudilla, Carriongosene, and then Diggy Sablakanga was Tigore. Jesada, Diungor, Jesna, some law rang chasing some tona, Rana Gangashan, Laganga Yonada, Champagne Besimi Kunilana, Ranle Diggy Yoyati, Chagore, Jesada, then in the Pinanga to Dundo, Shingor, Tavin, Tabdicala, Carrelli mean the Gorsene, Dundo, Jebudi Miche, Jebudi Awoyoya, Dondala, the Gor. The table the single Loma, Yaga, Mambo, Jingum the Gayongore, so Sugidi, Rewachigoma, did you go, did Council Tunda Tabiati, Yaga, Loma, and Digil Meach in the Gomara. Yalaga, Loma. Dear Nazutundo of Doom, Kare Tagores in a Penable Sing Taba and the Christian Tagors and Ebo Single Loma Yakukena. Yaga Yakuyona some Tabgo Marwa. Carson Gemma able Jebu Minche, the Jebu de Yakuragi, Dona Tagorwa, Tondo Tabia Chasan Jebu Dona Tagorwa, Mado di Yaga Loma de Geraya Dona Tabgo Mare. Chedam Jebu de Minche Tabgorte, Yaga Loma de Gerashu con a game gorda. Mogol and a corner Leon Gorwa, Dinashi, Mu Shen, Simjan Tamjel Pembe, some Kunet Tange, Yamne Jebaina. Rangla Kevendi, Rangshu Ligor, the some mother and a Leon Gorege. Says that dinner is that Jensen Banabi, Rang chasing some of the Pachipu Pakaya, and Shen Jebas, somebody, Garachevin, Shen Jebas, Messam Kunia Naji, Jigore, says Anazine, Shen Jebba, Rang chasing Bang, Sapana, Shen Jebas, sometimes Legalevena, Rang Digi Mebadan, and the Jigge, Rang Misum Yamoya, Rang and the trading Jemoy, didn't Chago Mares, and I did it.
The conclusion of this morning session, I mentioned that bodhisattvas, they strive to abandon the self-cherishing through cultivating the opposing mind, the other cherishing mind. And as I mentioned, however, we should not allow if we have a predisposition to having a negative self-view, a self-critical view, that we should not allow that to arise and thinking that actually this is helping build our other cherishing attitude. This would be a mistaken approach. So we need to be very clear that we strike the balance between striving for the welfare of others without neglecting ourselves. We need to take care of ourselves in order to be able to give to others. So this means one needs to always ensure one is taking a balanced approach, not falling into an extreme, certainly not this extreme of selfishness, but not the extreme of self-deprecation, where when harm comes to oneself and one ignores this. In order to be of benefit to others, your mind needs to be in an excellent place. And also, your body needs to be healthy and strong as well. Therefore, it's imperative you take care of your mind as well as your material circumstances, your body and all that is around you that supports your body. This is imperative so that you can help others. Because in order to help others, your how do we say in English? Your glass needs to flow over so that you can give to others. So your mind needs to be light, relaxed, and joyous. Then you can give to others sincerely. It will not be a burden, but a joy. Whereas if your mind is stressed and uptight, then you may do what is required of you, but it will not be a true act of giving because your mind is not open and spacious. You'll be doing what you are meant to do rather than sincerely giving of yourself to others. So to bring happiness into the lives of others, you yourself need to be happy. So therefore, one needs to ensure that one is achieving the right balance. And this includes the bodhisattva practice of resting, of rejuvenating. And this is done so as to build up strength to be able to give again. Relax the mind, relax the body, so that one can, when one is refreshed, to give of oneself. This is a balanced approach. And therefore, one needs to strike a balance between giving, but becoming worn out, and on the other extreme will be just looking after yourself. This is a balance that one needs to always watch that you are achieving. And therefore, there are times when you say, I'm sorry I cannot, or not now, and that is fine to do, and you should do so with confidence, knowing that you will give, but right now you need to build up your resources a little bit. And moreover, to maybe make the point about being relaxed about achieving your goal. If you think of yourself as a gardener or farmers of crops, they will have as their goal some beautiful plants if they are a gardener, or an abundant crop if they are a farmer. That is what they'll be focused on, and they'll make sure at the right time of year they're planting the appropriate seeds in the appropriate soil, and it gets the right amount of nourishment, and that's it. They will not be overly worried about the stalk of the plant and the leaves of the plant. If it's thinking of, say, a fruit farmer, they'll be focused on what are the qualities of the apples. That will be their focus. So such a person is not necessarily going to be thinking about the Buddhist philosophy of dependent arising. We, however, will be. So here, we should have as our goal freeing all beings from suffering, and to do so, becoming a Buddha. How to do so? This is where our focus is. By giving of ourselves, growing and developing as a person, as a practitioner, and giving of ourselves. And not being overly stressed, not being impatient, not worrying, am I doing well enough? Am I achieving well enough? And so forth. Here, the skilled practitioner, with their understanding of dependent arising, ensures they accumulate the right causes, knowing with confidence that the causes are accumulated, the results will come. So this is just like the farmer. They will plant and care for the crop, and with that they'll be confident the result will come. So with ourselves, we can have a relaxed attitude, a spacious mind, knowing from accumulating the causes, the result will come.
다 되게 먼저 대시쇼게 뇌주디비 용가체스 뇌단 주주권에 강한 체도다 장쇼람도 교수 세대 뇌주권에 뇌기 토네네 치 뇌기 토네 강한 체도가라 안에 되니게 그냥 경한 장쇼람도 교수들이 마슈바래 다 되네 샘주세데 Shen Semjengi Ganga Te Denixti de Kabla, that in a King Alam de Usudi, Shuare, Chisadine Delia, Gunla Gerin Chawar Gom, said Digisungore, Gunla Gerin Chawar Gom, said Digita, Chu Yukone, and the Chike, King and Yodu Kabla, and Jashulam de Usud Mas, Samata Jashulam de Usud Sungore.
When we started looking at this third point yesterday afternoon, we looked at the first. When the world and its inhabitants are filled with negativities, transform adversity into the path to enlightenment. So the world refers to the physical environment, and that is one source from which adverse circumstances are encountered, and the other is from people within that environment, so from people. And wherever the source of the adversity comes, the skillful practitioner transforms how they relate to that circumstance and comes to the point where they no longer experience it as adverse because they are so skilled at transforming it into the path that they do not experience challenges as being adverse. Now we come to the fourth point, which is the third point, which is specific about the inhabitants, so from people. And here we meditate upon the great kindness of all. So here we meditate on the kindness of sentient beings.
Desulia, Simjendiki, Kangate, Ganzugarlo, Lamsa, Semagibacha, Oda, Koyanga, Kangate, Pechik, Dujarishas, and Lamsa, Delia, Lenjada, Konroke, Semagibacha, Dene, Ya Konroke, Yungor, what Anzulia. Says that Dene, Kanga, David Gabla, Shengi, Dusin, Mamida, Dundola, Sosolia, never Kija, Kanga, Gabla, and Denigi never give a Kanga, Kangachi, Yovache. And Digalia, that's also a semitone. I'll do it better, Duchas, and I begging her Tonjo Tangutunga, Gangajigus and Big Denigi, some Lotambana, some Lutonia, Yajik, Gangachi, Macha, Ligores. Jazandakachi or Labna, Dikanga Yoge Sabla, that Denigi, Sosugi, Givinium and Jetu Chihores, Ganga, some Matavache, and Givinium and Jetu Chihore. Takanichi or a ladder, she has some Jengi Ralia, never Ganga to Kapla. And the Delia or that in Nigan, never begin some Pay Yavures, Yavures, Pay getting Chimber and Alapando Chimbores begin. That Bene getting Chimboda and the Jiggy, Sosulia, Pando Chimbo in body, some tangores. Then they all come paying Ala Yavure and Ala getting Chimbore, Pay Yavure, some down. Cope Dujares and some Ligma, Conking marriages, so same much by young marriages. Or go Yabore, Pando Chimbore, Yabore, somebody, so similarly a guided lady horse. Just same much by young marriages, just on Conking young marriages, same much young marriage. Just then the Natone, Gangate, you got all that pay Yabore, Dangal, Garden Chimbore, Pando Chimbores, and some dango regere. This some Davena, the Denigi, Shangi, Gangate, the Kabla. Sosulia seemed the Ganga Yongi Tabla, Yahures and the Colia, Dushan some night, and to some of the Givichol Kutubu regere.
When one encounters an adverse circumstance, one's mind, let's say it was very balanced, very even before. Through encountering an adverse circumstance, the mind becomes unhappy, and from that, anger can arise, whether at a slight level, such as annoyance or frustration, or exploding into rage. And the sources of our anger can be other people, can be animals, and we will continue, as long as we are surrounded by ordinary beings, to be around those who either act towards us in an unskillful manner, or they act towards us in a way we do not appreciate. So here, it's important to recognize that this is normal behavior. It's par for the course. We should not be surprised, we should not be disappointed. There's no need to even complain when others act in a way that either we dislike or that we could say is unskillful behavior. This is the case for ordinary beings. By even that recognition, one's mind will be a little more relaxed when experiencing unwanted circumstances. And this is important because how we respond to unskillful behavior determines whether we become greatly unhappy, moderately unhappy, or not unhappy at all. And it's here we need to come to also recognize that it's through our way of thinking that the behavior of others is interpreted and therefore experienced. If we are unskillful in our way of thinking, the pain we experience is greatly magnified. If we are skillful, we maybe don't experience any pain. And if we are particularly skillful, joy will arise in our mind, virtue will arise in our mind. When you go through this thought process, it should give one a sense of confidence, an empowering feeling that by training my mind, I can experience the same thing in a radically different way. So how to train our mind? This is the third point. Meditate upon the kindness of all. We need to cultivate a way of relating to others that a natural warmth, a closeness arises in relation to others, whomever they are. And this is cultivated by meditating on their great kindness. And again, as the translator said yesterday, think of this kindness or benefit. The kindness they intentionally show us, or the benefits they intentionally or inadvertently bring into our life. Because if we have that, the appreciation for others through the kindness and benefit they bring into life, if we have that at the forefront of our mind, then when they act to us in any manner, because of this warmth we feel towards them, this affection we feel for them, we are very unlikely to get angry. And therefore, we can, in this way, transform an otherwise adverse circumstance into virtue, into the causes that will lead to enlightenment. So yeah, one really needs to think, because there will be all too many experiences when you said to yourself, hang on, in that instance, how can I say this person is kind to me? This person is benefiting me. Did you hear what they said? Did you see what they did? This clearly was harmful behavior. How am I supposed to think of how kind they are when they said or did what they did?
Di tanwe yakwe mi yumchan gare lamna o ko ngala nyoba cheba yinza ngi khol ya ane sebo komya ge nyamne che ko khra gi dos ngal ya sebo komya nyamne di ko nyoba ji je nga ne sebo komya ji ma su le nyoba ma ji nga su le sebo komya ko khra gi mi dos che sang sebe nyamne che di ra di konju nyoba cheba de la tene nga sebe nyamne che ra gi dos sebe nyamne che ta sebe nyamne che de che sang so su ge sem le shenle minebe neba samada sebe nyamne che andi ma se da deji konju nyoba cheba tia ku cheba le tene nga khozolya jam ni ji komya ko khra gi dos che sa da sanje gi ma ju ya lamden ji ju sebe nyamne che ko re ani jam ni ji kom ko re ma lobjong ji je ma ju ge jam ni je sebe nyamne che ra wa za sanje de nga zu le gedin chimbor pe ma pha do chimbor sung ko ro was di na shi da jig ba re shas da ko ngal nyoba cheba tene nge de le khol sebe nyamne che ya da ani ji ge o de ko le jam da ni ji komya che sa nge nyamne jam da ni je da sebe nyamne che ra gi do sambi ge samna ta je tene gedin chimbor tene pe ko re sambi da pha khon ma je de ya sebe komya da an deji tene gi khol ya nyoba cheba dia deji nga ju shoge deji ye le sheba na ji Lela namji chila da sedi kanga yunga chasan gyu ranga chizing samno dine yungo re se deshinga tu su nga zungo ne samtang rwa da pa samtang je ko nga le nyoba che di ko sem ma jiba ko le ya ma jikba sem kanga je samno di yunga di chewe nga le ya chewa je samno yunga di karsine ko sem ma jiba re koron rang chizing samno di xiangwang du gyur che ane duasha kongzha la sopa gye chen di nga nyoba chi gore da dine mi simchen koron le rangwa yo ma re nyomong pe xiangwang du gyuba rang chizing ki xiangwang du gyuba re che nying che sempe nying ji kom dine nying ji kom an nying ji kom na da ngal nyoba cheba na kaya mi no kaya ma re da dine dine ki koron ya digi ane pa kongzha la ya tsabla pa nying je da jamba komba komyo du je zada Gedin chewa gomje jambada ninju gomyodu garachabare labna kwe zu nyoba chedu nyoba che kanga chedu nganzu sem majiba kanga chege tsabla ane pa sebo gom jambada ninju gomyodu jam ninje da sebe nyamle deda sanju goma tu gyuche goroba jeza dine enza dine ki nyamlen cheyodu jeza oda 주기 관에 semje shengi nyoba chibi kabla denegi kanga matiba janju lamdo gyurto kingen deni chobayna da janju lamdo gyuba sanji yo koban tuba lamgi nyamlin je tuba di ondu che gore se sungore da kunla gedin chewa komsadi
So if you think of instances where the way someone has acted or spoken to you really was not a display of kindness, a bodhisattva in that same situation would experience those words or that physical behavior in a different way. And this is because bodhisattvas are remarkably skilled practitioners and therefore experience the world in very different ways. So when someone acts to them in an unkind way, the bodhisattva recognizes, because of their extensive prior training, that this person is now giving me the opportunity to practice patience. And not only am I being presented with this opportunity, but I'm taking it. I am practicing patience. How fortunate am I? So this recognition for the bodhisattva, it leads to their mind being joyous because they are seeing the results of their training. That they've put so much time and energy into cultivating these skills, and now they're meeting someone who's speaking to them in an unkind manner, and their response is just ones of love, compassion, and wisdom. Therefore, they recognize that due to this person's activities, they are receiving so much benefit. So this person is acting towards them in a way that turns out to be really beneficial. It wasn't their intent, but this is the result. So here it's important perhaps to define what the mind of patience is in Buddhism. The mind of patience isn't merely staying silent or not responding. It's not merely that. Patience is a mind. It's a mind that stays calm in the face of adversity. Whatever that adversity is, if one's mind stays calm, undisturbed, then one is practicing patience. So here now, in this first part, the bodhisattva recognizes that they are practicing patience in dependence on this person. And therefore, there is reason to feel a sense of appreciation for them. Because this person has now provided the bodhisattva with an opportunity to transform an adverse circumstance into the path to enlightenment. Furthermore, so that's the first part. Now a second part. For the bodhisattva to be in this position, they have heard many teachings such as these and meditated effectively on them, radically transformed their minds. So they know to thrust all the blame onto a single source, that self-cherishing mind. So they've understood this whole process, this entirety of the teachings up to this point. They have understood, they've come to realize. Therefore, they have a clear understanding of the mental process of this being before them. There's no confusion of why they're acting like this to me, why they're talking to me like this, what have I done to deserve this? There's no confusion like that. They know this person's mind's afflicted. Their self-cherishing is dominating within them. And for that reason, they are acting in this unskillful way. That immediately allows compassion to arise, because they recognize this person is suffering. Moreover, they do not define this person by their speech or their physical behavior, nor by their mind motivating them. Because of the skill of the Bodhisattva in their own education and meditation, they know that this person is now acting under the control of their afflictions, under the control of their self-cherishing. They are not that affliction. They are not the self-cherishing mind. Because the Bodhisattva themselves have gone through the process of weakening and perhaps abandoning these minds. They know the person before them, this angry or aggressive person, is not their afflicted mind. It's merely arisen and is dominating because that is their habituation. So therefore, they clearly recognize that this person is under the control of their afflictions, but they are not their afflictions. So compassion can arise. And from this explanation, you hear that the Bodhisattva is utilizing their wisdom. It's their wisdom, their intelligence, it's the same word, wisdom, intelligence, to understand what is happening for this person. Through using their intelligence, compassion arises, love arises. Therefore, the Bodhisattva will only respond with kindness in response to the harm they're receiving. Why? Because they know they are benefiting greatly from this person's behavior, generating patience, accumulating the causes for enlightenment, and because of their mind being patient, the three qualities can arise in their own mind: love, compassion, and wisdom. And this is how they're relating to this person. So here you see how, through patience, love, compassion, and wisdom can arise, because the mind is not afflicted, so because it's patient, so love, compassion, and wisdom arise. And in this way, this adverse circumstance, through the arisal of patience, love, compassion, and wisdom, is transformed into the path to enlightenment.
And Lemrin Chimbotang, Juju Chimbe Kabla, Son du Sube Yamlin Sungore, Chesada, Mandu Dungala Kasore, and Nebale Chimeni Buseva, Kom Siache. Nebale Chimeni Buseva, Dunga Dando Limbe Seba, Nebale Chimeni Buseva, Shala Nesmi Seba, Seba Sumiorua, Chesa Nebale Chimeni Buseva. New to never to do Kayamaras and Pat Kasore, Nanchona, Dati, Digi. Kasori Geshe Matsibache and the never take to never delia on the corner Malabata and Junji some Mata delia gave in the Chetua in the never the Jimmy Seba said Jesadi Manjuki Junji Chimbota that on the Minchim Kabla Song the Passion Juginane Sevenium Sword Dang Digi Shoge that they needed Sevenium Sungutua. Chisada Digi Shogashe di King Kasore, Leland Tamjila da said Juyukune to say do that Kasore Dungal Chimani Seba, Dunga Darling Seba Siata. That the Nijigi did sooner do, and the Gula getting Chawakum to Subenium share do, and the Nebal Chimani Seba said, Subenium Dusin. Tiniam Jedu, Jamni Janiam Dugore, Subenium Dugor, Niga do Yungor Deliada.
This morning, I've referenced that in the Lama teachings here on patience are presented in the section on the perfection of patience. And in the Bodhisattva's way of life, this is what we are covering now, this entire year, the perfection of patience. And the perfection of patience is presented in a threefold division, 3 types of patience. So what we have just completed on the Wednesday night and what was covered earlier today is a patience of willingly accepting hardships. Here we are talking about a second type of patience, that is the patience of disregarding harm from others. So therefore, by engaging in these trainings, in this meditation manual, one draws on one's education and meditation gained in the primary source material, that of the Lamrim, as well as Bodhisattva's way of life.
아니 셴기 수녀버체다 델이야 아니 쇠버고묘도 가르스네 아니 녀버체리도 델레 삼다이도 아니 파심전달에 니지기야다 용거래 니지기야 용거래스 제자다 데니게 삼다이도 데니게 강아요다 셰 랑기 류레 네나자다 강아요아레 셴기 랑레 녀버체가 강아요한테 차상 유가를 되는 용어스네 대지 쇼베셰바나지 랑 지징에 삼로 데니게 녀모바게 디기 원기 디버사베 디빌리기 대부차고레스 제자다 디빌리기 대보레 제자 디니에서 유 디버세디다 빵고도 디버지기 민도아 선배기다 디 강아디게 마야 마오바나 마야라 유 디버디게 빵고 셈고도 세야다 다디 소소 데니게 마야기 디기 용아에디 가르스네 개발을 되는 용거 제자 개발 두고도에 세 두고도 선배게 삼로다 데니게 삼로 디니스티다 셴래 잠니제 녜중게야 안에 랑링에 코에 동안에 타르게 녜중게야다 랑기 가야 좀야 랑녜중게 셴래 니지게야 데네 디기 동아요요 규 디발에 제미야 데네 소소 디기 용아에게 규 아니 개와 두벼야 되려야 아니 데네게 냠는 제발에 판도 용고래서 제상 가상한저 준주 침번나야 가르송은 교회 제바 세와체 디글라 쯤신 코어발라 니제지 디글라 쯤신 개라가 가서随便 냠는 거데 네 대시면 예 교회 제바 셀버체 교부제도 소소 강아지도 소소 가자샤로 그래서 교회 제바 세와체 데네가 코어발라 니제지 코와 데데 강아지 삼면데 랑지징이 요모 뭔가 두시는 코와 코데 강아지 거를 선배 삼다도 샘젤에 니지기 그래서 제자다 누가 믿어봐자 유튜브随便 냠는다 가상 굉장히 시사상 어디 이제 가지 교회 잡아 세워지서 코와 발라 니지기에서 딜라 잼신 겔라가스 대둥아유 가소리 뇌제다 둥아유 연대 삼바들 연대 삼제 두신의 삼바들 네 네. 네 교회 잡아 세워지 코어발라 니지게 겔라가신 가사 딜라 잼신 겔라가 그래서 코어발라 니지게 세미네 내냐 둥아 연대니세 코어발라 니지게 내야 둥아 연대네 교회 잡아 세와체 코어발라 니지게 딜라 셈신 겔라가 지나다 디수 돈다 집어 차고 그래서 냠네
So we've looked here. So looking at the third of the 7 points, and the first subpoint refers to adverse circumstances coming from the world and from its inhabitants. And so within this, we can see, I've mentioned, that of the threefold division of suffering, the threefold division of patience, two are mentioned: willingly accepting hardship. So this is particularly clear when dealing with material hardship, and the second type, patience of disregarding harm from others. So that's is clear in its name. So these have both been covered, and when one engages in this practice of patience, it has so many benefits. So Genla recited a verse that we covered just very recently on a Wednesday night. That was just taking me time to find it, on the benefits of the practice of patience, or the benefits of suffering, which incorporates this. So suffering, so I'm reading from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, I think it was the 21st verse in the 6th chapter. Suffering does have further good qualities. Haughty arrogance is dispelled due to wariness. Compassion arises for beings bound in samsara. Non-virtue is refrained from, and virtue is delighted in. So here the point that I'm making is by training one's mind well in patience, one is not overwhelmed by adverse circumstances, but rather is able to transform them into the path to enlightenment. Then suffering's benefits are apparent to oneself. Now maybe not so much, but when one's skilled with one's mind, then the first line of this verse, suffering does have further good qualities. One will recognize that when one is encountering hardship, yes, because I can deal with it, this instance is actually an opportunity. So one recognizes, the second line, haughty arrogance is dispelled due to wariness. This people often know in their own life. When we're experiencing difficulties, often it breaks down our pride, and we become more humble. But specifically, it refers to wariness with samsara, where we recognize that myself and all other beings bound in cyclic existence in samsara are controlled by our afflictions. And instead of then feeling puffed up and arrogant, pointing a finger at others for acting in this way or talking in that way, this arrogance dissipates, and we recognize we are all in the same boat of being suffering beings bound by these afflictions. So in this way, our pride is dispelled. The third line, compassion arises for beings in samsara, because one understands why they're suffering. And that suffering, though, is needless. They suffer because of their deep habituation to the afflictions, and you haven't yet come to understand how to gain freedom from them. And then the fourth line, non-virtue is refrained from, and virtue is delighted in. Understanding the role the afflictions play, one is adamant to not engage, to follow them. And in our context here, even the self-cherishing mind, one refrains from it being an influence, because one wants to gain Buddhahood for the sake of others. And the last part, and virtue is delighted in. So one joyously refrains from the afflictions and engages in virtue. So within this last line, non-virtue is refrained from and virtue is delighted in. This also encompasses what we've looked at earlier, that every suffering encounter or every adverse circumstance one encounters, one recognizes this is merely the ripening of past karma. And if it's an adverse circumstance, it's likely to be the ripening of negative karma. And now, because I'm not, so now it is being exhausted. There's negative karma, it's ripened, and it's exhausted. But what is particularly joyous for the practitioner is not only is the past negative karma exhausted, but because I'm responding in a skillful way, I'm not creating new non-virtue, but I'm creating virtue. So in this way, for all these reasons, the skilled practitioner responds to life's adverse circumstances with a light and joyous attitude, doesn't take them seriously, recognize that they are merely a dependence arising, ripening, and they're exhausting non-virtue and so forth, and therefore excellent qualities can easily arise in the practitioner.
That's Delia, Semajiba, Dunga Majiba, Di Sablia, Jam Nijeta, and Survey Yamlin Jene, and the Jiggy or Dushan and Jiggy, King Janju, Samloti, Janju Tupi, Guru, Tichi, Tugore, Saja Sungore, Tina Janju Samanamji, Chik Dusine, Nangore, Chitugore, Tanganzolia, the Scali Howard, the Ganga Chair, the Kabla, Lamsa Dini, some Tatu, Kalik Howard, Chisa Dini, Zanganzul, Carres. Dini yi ganga mati nyele ni ya soso ya samna ya o du she ganga chena di gala samna dini tang ko dini che ko re se be di samno di jang do che de ge chi mo re jang do che ko ya de jema ganga dini chena nge samno dini tangi dini de sam tangi se be da du shin samno tangi pe ne ganga che be na soso le ne na sa da dini ganga chu o da dini ne na sa chu ya di Gudan Kin, Leda, Nyomo, Ongi, Yungorwa, Chisande, Leda, Nyomo, Ongi, Gusa Savage, Letibo, but Hachabare, Sembeke, Samdan, Teleta, Denigim, Ayondi Gablia, and the Chick, Delia, Dadu Lenche, and the Anangas Nyomoba, and the Chick, Ranchis and Samloti, Papayalia, Yoyage, Tipati Payala, Kichimori, Sembeke Dusha, some data, and Shengi, Ranlia, Nubata, Ganga Tebana, Tatelia, and the Chingi today on the Corolana, and the Ranjin, Niga Kiwimba, Kiwimba, check it, near Coromala, Jetelia, Silver Comche, Colia, and the Dushan, Jetuba Chicken Cor, and the Rama Mapa, Koran Shawang, Numo, Shawan Cuba, the Ninja, Sembeke, Ninja come to a chickens, didn't come Goores, then chickens and be, or Dushan, somebody, Yane, and Dushan Dang, and Dushan, some Dang, then. Janadi, Duchado Cheti, and Yechimor Chagore.
So bodhisattvas, these skilled practitioners, when they encounter an adverse circumstance, because of their prior training, they are naturally patient. Being patient, therefore, being patient means the afflictions are not arising, which means the mind still being calm, love, compassion, and wisdom can arise, and they can respond to the adverse circumstance, whatever it may be, guided by love, compassion, and wisdom. And this is how bodhisattvas transform adverse circumstances into the path of enlightenment. And whether those adverse circumstances come from the world, the material environment, or from inhabitants, so whether it's thoughts arising within or expressions from other people, whatever it may be, the bodhisattva remains calm, even because of their habituation to patience, and thereby love, compassion, and wisdom arise in the face of adversity. So for them, this is their natural way of being. One would describe them as being very patient people, as loving, compassionate, wise people. This is their very way of being. For us, not so much. But it is entirely possible for us to become just like them. We need to train our minds, and by training in the way they have, we will accumulate the causes they have, and therefore we will experience the result they have. With this understanding then, we train our mind to relate to hardships in a skillful manner. And there one takes hardships one has encountered and thinks about how I could have responded more skillfully, or thinks about hardships one is likely to encounter and prepares oneself. How should I think about this in a skillful manner? So for example, illness for some will be being experienced now, for others it will still come. So when illness comes, we know this is the ripening of karma, which was accumulated under the influence of afflictions, and has probably been ripened now with the ripening factors of afflictions, and therefore illness has come. And from this, recognition that this is just a ripening fact of karma, the mind will be a little calmer, and we can think further. As I am suffering due to past accumulated non-virtue, I recommit to abandoning non-virtue, to not accumulating negative karma. In particular, I recommit to abandoning the afflictions, and in particular, the self-cherishing mind. So this is a skillful way to respond to an adverse circumstance, such as illness. Or, if one gets angry, then afterwards, recognizing one got angry, and one was oneself suffering, and perhaps is still feeling the after effects of that anger, recognize that you've also brought harm to others, generate regret, and purify through cultivating, for example, compassion. Compassion for those who acted in a way that you found difficult, and in this way, generate compassion for them. And so in this way, take the various pieces of advice that have been given here and train your mind in this way. Develop this way of thinking so that you become skilled on your meditation cushion, and eventually you'll become skilled off your meditation cushion. When you're in society, interacting with others, you'll relate to the world in a similar way to how the Bodhisattva does.
Bendigo tonglen nyamnen chiri kapla tangbo lembi korim rane tsam sede rangi ne rang tangbo sosona tsam de nyema maomba na chungyur ki dunga di su lenche do shene an janggo gres sonsoa dirachi barwa lembi korim rane tsam sede denegi nyamnen chibi kapla ta sosugi dunga nyoya ki maomba dunga nyoya di kanga naze de yongina ta maomba da naze nyoya di ta chen naze di 소소레 예비기 나와로제 예바제 안데니 예바데 안나 규라게 된들 중화라 가야 말다 데니 디바다로 그래서 제가 데니기 요하게 규디 디바르치다 디바방고레 세베 두시나 삼다데 삼미다데 제가 데니 다데 마음바나 데니 소소 네바제 생기 네바체데 네바제데 다데데 파수 예비기 나와데 소소게 네기 예바에 소소게 dunlu nejeedi sosu dunlu yebe mebache koyangala tsiksulaba tongo namgyu temba chik negi yobade tuduse nawache dene sosuge delia an oda ko denegi ngale nebache ko rangwa yoma ko nyomobe shawando sonbade ko rangjizing samma di ondu yo mikora ka yoma ningje sambege nije komyada ane denegi an delia an seba komya du samdabene jesan du chine 장도 제베이나 되는 마음바나 강아지 무슨 체험도 갑라 남사 안디 삼로 다토에 비주 다토야데 용고를 받아 당한조 니엘레도 장도 맞잖아 그도 되라 나제다 되는 긴한 체험도 안에 심마기와 차야마도 안에 지 남사디 냠는디기 제도와도 용마로와 지자마제 가사사네 강아지 마체 니엘레네야 만주게 수렌제 도신 충자 누우진 삼로 공구 제베나 되네 강아 춘줄 제대다 가지고 지게 미생염도 되게 소소 조고 편주다 안에 밤은 예쁜 직대네 직 편줄이야 됐는 유로 때에 남상 오다 디텐션 남상 콜리아 대고 강아제 카요만 인제 셈비 인제 삼다야다 안에 세보고 면냠내 제바이나 디두서 춘춘 제바이나 제상 렘비 고름라네 잠세 가상 소야 디디레 두스진에 냠내 지네 지고래 디나신 준주 첨번을 가르 송어서는 곰네 가서 곰나 라월 미규베 오버카야 여마이스 가서 세베냠네 지도 세바 다들림 바지게 강아 춘춘 바지 다들림 공부 제배나 되네 강아 첨보디게 안에 곰도 바지 용그래 세상 곰네 두스네 춘춘 곰네 고두스 레라라 저니 두그래 되네게 내 곰제 레라와 마조가 가야 여마레 저 두그래 세야지 온도 숭도와 제사다 되서 직발해
Yesterday, when we were looking at taking and giving, so in the main practice, the 10th point, commence the sequence with taking from oneself. So this is very similar to what I've just been presenting, that as aspirants to the Bodhisattva paths, we need to start training where we are, not pretending as if we were Bodhisattvas, but train where we are. and start in the practice of taking and giving, in taking on suffering that we know we will still encounter. And this training is very similar to what we're looking at here. The training in taking and giving is very similar to the training in patience, in that one should start training with illustrations in one's own life. So again, mention illness. So imagine, so for those who are in good health, you know illness will come. You may be fine now, but illness will come. So you remind yourself, when illness comes, it will be merely the ripening of non-virtuous karma. Therefore, there's no need to even question about whether it's wanted or unwanted. It's not actually the point. The causes have been accumulated, ripening conditions have been met, and here's the result. There's no need to be particularly bothered by it, because all that's happened, causes and conditions came together, a result came. So this helps, this recognition keeps the mind relaxed, and you remind yourself, this is the ripening of non-virtuous karma. I am not going to replace it with any further non-virtuous karma, and you recommit to refraining from non-virtue, in particular the afflictions. So that's one illustration relating to physical illness, pain, whatever it may be. Second is the common occurrence of interacting with others who speak to you in a way you dislike. So they could be either berating you with anger or condescending to you from a place of arrogance, whatever it is. These instances, you have many examples in your life, you call them to mind, and now you think, how could I respond skillfully? Because for sure you'll meet such, you'll have such an encounter again. So you train yourself how to respond, recognizing that this person is talking to you in this way because they are under the control of their afflictions. What you are hearing is not an expression of the person, it's an expression of their afflictions. Therefore, I, in my response, should be aware that this isn't an awful person saying harmful things to me, who's looking down on me, but rather be aware that this is a person whose mind is dominated by the afflictions. Therefore, they are suffering. And therefore, I will respond to them with skill, with care, and with kindness. It's not about me. They are not really talking about me, even though they are addressing me. They are merely expressing their afflicted mind. And therefore, I will respond either with silence, or I will respond with apology, or I respond with kindness, whatever it may be. So now, this training, these are a couple of illustrations, you do again and again, and you build up your habituation, so that when you encounter such an instance, you have training that will naturally arise. Because hearing teachings like these, very important, but they will not alone lead to a change in behavior. You have to do these meditations again and again, then it will become part of you. It will be your natural response. In the actual situation of encountering hardship, there it's very difficult to generate this kind of response if one isn't trained. If one is trained a bit, one can call it to mind, and at least you know, well, I should be responding like this and not like that. And that's a step in the right direction. But you keep going, and when you are trained well, your natural response will be one of kindness, care, and wisdom. Then I encourage you that in your reflections, in your recollection of actual experiences, think of those people that you encounter the most. Probably the people you live with, or those that you work with, because these are the people that are going to most probably trigger you the most, and therefore train how to be more skillful in relation to them. And when you have some success, it will be much easier with others, because these are the people again that you meet the most, and therefore they probably trigger you most frequently. So train in relation to what they say and do, that sets you off. And then to finally quote another verse from the 6th chapter of Shantideva, the 14th verse. There is nothing at all that does not become easier through familiarization. Thus, through familiarity with minor challenges, great challenges are easily borne. So what this verse points to is that by training your mind with minor things, and most of what makes us unhappy, in the broad scheme of things, are insignificant. Becoming skilled with that, when we do encounter grave problems, we'll be able to deal with them too.
안지 강아지 망고용 거와 지상한테 생겨나래 통고래 되게 기시고 근데 거기에 가지고 갈로 삼고서 아다 빼 독자래 미디 대디 독자래 선배기 당은 지게 뜻 이제 거기 빼 독자 거기 미망고 수요거를 강아시다 강아지 빼 독자래 선배기 남상 가서 셈마기 버쳐야다 콘르게디 아니 디 용고로와다 니 용고로와 디네 갑라 제자 다디디니 레렌 함제 지대다 군나 그린 채워 곰 세디 디시디 이디기 베제타디 안 용고래 제자 디네자 레렌 함제 지레다스 대진 아주 섬다 나진 오다고 젠리아 마제 젠리아 채워셔야디 다 녀모베 샤마도 소와 코로나도 랑 지진 코로나 지게라 첨버쳐야 코로나 어제라야 코로나게 지디기 용야 코로나 지부 섬다지 젠리아 채워지 지고 제자 녀모베 젠리 뇌베 선배 군네라 지거 미콜라 랑어요마 닝제 다고 녀모베 샤마도 소와 랑 지진게 샤마도 소와 닝제 선배 공부이나 다고 닝제 공제 공부는 아주 코로나게 말에 데니기 뇌베 중사 네버 중세기 미디게 네긴 포사에 가사디기네 어떠고도 강아지 닝지 다 콘지레 개왕아마 코노도 디네 동안요아 레사레기 지부 민버레 다치다 닝지 선배 데니기 다 닝지 공부이나 편준이가 닝지 공부이나 데는 저기 데메기다 콘르게데 디버사야데 용고 말에 제가 데네 인가지 닝지 공부도 배다 두자라샤 지지지색 직남상 소소셈 마기바자 콘르게 지지디 소소셈 마기 콘르게디 파저들이 패스가요 말와다 소소소 강아지 차고로 제가 데네서 데니 강아지 통유도 갑라 남상 데려 군요모베 샤원 소 닝지아 셈비기 닝지게다 안 데니게 강아지에 되게 동아지게다 나 디부민 거 인지 다 데니게 삼다제 다 데니게 가사 요모베 샤원 소베 가사 되게 랑지지 삼로디게 파도 안 건주결에 셴 베네 다 셴지지에 셴래 편바데 제외 삼바 되게 예제 안에 그 차상의 시도 용화지 용어 쇼 셈비게 도시네 몰람게레 몰람게나 디고 도신 제르와 디나신다 가상한저 동련 삼다에도 데니기 마자다 데니기 랑치진다 뇽모베 군이라 셴래 체외 삼바디게 소소소소래 레 소소기 수레 닝제세베 니제도네 제 수레다 거기서 교육이라 잠바 셴래 체와다 니베 삼바데 매바 차송한 선배 다 소소기 다 거기 리베 셴 le pembe semba devadiki digi pa dang kolya da pembe semba semba da zewe samla ge song da gonzu chasan ji ma so zu ba hije hide cha so se bege denigi me ba ji monlam dewa ina dang zu gewa so so gewa sa ko re denigi kanga di de so le dene mu su chue de gewa sa ko ro on du shine da denigi da de di su jinya lamdu juwa se dige de sol pa du chen jar chen nyamne chen je yo bar wa da chasa.
And a further instance where you can take this 14th verse and apply it, the verse, there's nothing that does not become easier through familiarization, thus through familiarity with minor challenges, great challenges will be patiently borne. So a great challenge can be something that we or our loved ones experience that is truly harmful, that is an extreme situation. A minor challenge can be what we observe at a distance and doesn't really impact on us at all, other than emotionally. Where we have situations of this is when we watch the news. And when we see imagery of warfare, and we see accounts of the victims of warfare, and we see, and we see accounts from the victims of warfare, and we hear speeches by the perpetrators of warfare. So, relatively speaking, this is a minor challenge in that we are sitting in the comfort of our home, observing what clearly is a great challenge for the victims of war. So here, this is an instance where one can utilize this training and create extensive virtue. So firstly, one needs to guard one's mind from the habitual response, the common response, which is immediately to divide what we are observing into a victim and a perpetrator. Rather, in relation or in dependence on what we've been hearing here, we recognize that this is an expression of the negative karma that has been accumulated and has now met its ripening conditions and is being experienced. We have what we normally call the victims. They are experiencing the ripening effect of their past non-virtuous karma. And the perpetrators are acting out the ripening effect of their own habitual tendencies for inflicting violence. So both parties are merely experiencing the results of their various habituations, of the karma they've created, their way of thinking. Here one is trying to recognize that the perpetrator is merely acting out under the influence of their afflictions, but by doing so, they're creating the causes that will lead them to even greater suffering in the future. And the victim of violence, they are experiencing the results of their past non-virtuous karma, and the way they are likely to respond is also through an arisal of afflictions. And therefore, they are suffering now, not just in the visible way, but the afflictions are rising in their mind as well. So here one, sitting in the comfort and the safety of one's own home, can practice taking and giving. So this first part of it was to hold both groups dear, to try and challenge the criticism that we have for the one and the feeling of closeness that we have for the other, but to rather have an impartial attitude, recognizing that both are suffering, both are victims of their karma and their habitual tendencies. And by holding them both dear, either one can just very simply make prayers for beings not to act under the influence of their afflictions, make prayers that beings no longer engage in the accumulation of non-virtue, or one can engage in the meditation on taking and giving. Imagine taking on the suffering minds, the suffering experiences of both groups, and giving back to them wisdom, love, and compassion, so that their afflicted minds cease, and that they themselves develop the qualities of the Bodhisattva, minds such as love and compassion and wisdom, and thereby could do no harm to others, but only bring benefits. So this is a case where, from the comfort of one's own home, one can engage in the practice of taking and giving, and transform one's own mind, so that later when oneself is the recipient of aggressive behavior, through this training, one will be able to respond in a skillful way. Returning to the text, now the fourth point. By meditating on illusory appearances as the four kayas, emptiness is protection unsurpassed. So here, the practitioner is using the wisdom realizing emptiness to transform adversity into the path to enlightenment.
Trunang kushi komba yi se da dambo kushi se de jidang do kushi se de chugo longo zhugo ane mo ni ko se de kushi ja yorwa da zhugo de da je bi ton da ga je le don da la mo ba na de ni ge zhuye ge ku zhuye ge dong ba ni sam da de da dong ba ni sam da de du shi ne sung go re kushi kombo se de.
The four kayas, or the four bodies of a Buddha, these refer to, so in English, the truth body, the enjoyment body, and the then the nature truth body, the wisdom truth body, the enjoyment body, and the emanation body. If you're more familiar with the Sanskrit, I can't say this, so I will give it up. So the nature truth body, the wisdom truth body, the enjoyment body, and the emanation body. So this is the four kayas of a Buddha. So through training in the conjoining through the wisdom realizing emptiness, being conjoined with bodhicitta, the final result is the attainment of these four bodies.
다 녀모바 차상 중에 유카상 킹이 셰바네 녀모바 탐제 중에 조디 다세 마리바 랑치싱에 다세 마리바데 레스 제자디 파 메바 녀보티에데 동방이 도베 코미에데레스 제자다 동방이 도베 로콤바이나 데니기 강한 영의 근주 차상 녀보지 뽕에게 녀보디 동유 공발에 하바 요 말에서 동유 송할라나메서 디송고레.
Emptiness is protection unsurpassed. So emptiness, or the word is emptiness, but it refers to the wisdom realizing emptiness, is the unsurpassed protection against the ignorance of self-grasping, or the ignorance of true grasping. So this is the meaning of, so the wisdom realizing emptiness is the unsurpassed protection against this ignorance. It is the supreme antidote, or the unsurpassed antidote.
Trunang kushi gombayi dongyu sumba lana mese da samdana de karesne trunang sedi da ngazui de shi sheba na shi sosolya chue yu dunga dang kanga dunga de yong ye yu rang chi sing ye samba de nyomo ba de sha she da di mo nyomo ba de nyomo ge jebo rang je ni ga le dunga chue tam je pa da ba na ngo le pa ngo kan de du se da yong du de zu cha sang lo chuwi wala nang zamji mato rang ngwen drup de ba de zawa ki ni mi do chesa da ko chesa ngang zu lo chuwi de nang zam chi re sha chesa na ji re mato de da tham je ane gang lai ma do rang ngwen ni je wa yo ma re de de ne rang ngwen ni je wa me ba de sam dang go re da dong yi ni ga nyum du wo da chunang kushi komba ye se de chuwe nangwa rangi lo chuwa la nang zam ma do dana kushi na ne da denigi nangwa di nangwa zam ma do rangi ngwe ne jewa chi yore be se ne ganglai ma do rangi ne jewa chi yore be se ne yo ma re se 제자 당아서 구시 검사대 다 돈이 공부를 시고 지당 구시도 원이고 longo 주고 세체 다도 구시 검사대 마음반에 디토비하게 동반이 또 로kom이들이 잘 시고 해제 지당 구시 검사 다디 디나시도 개와 랑신의 개와 매바도 최고 랑신 개와 매바도 최고 랑신이 가바 매바도 longo 안데 랑신이 개와다 가바 디바나 네바 매바도 주고 안 대송고 랑기 오 매바 오 열매바도 원이고 세네 dine char sungore chesa de mingdi kushi mingda wa ma do donda la rangshin ge kewa yo mare rangshin ga ba yo mare bar da rangshin gi kewa da ga ba di ni ga ya ma bar de ne ba yo mare chesa me ba sa rangshin kewa da rangshin kewa me ba rangshin ga ba me ba rangshin gi bar de ne ba me ba sumbo de ngo ye me rangshin gi ma do ngo chigre se che 어디 숨어 돈다디 구시 세대 구시 곰 세대 간시 곰야 디 공고래서 상시 benengazu dungadang dungage yege yu nyomo ba chasa lo chuwala na sammato kono ganes simju chebana kanglaye mato ba rangungone rubi kewa de yo mares ta rangungone kewa me ba ta kangla ma rangungone gaba yo mares kewa me ba gaba me ba dene ne ba yo mares de kangla mato rangungone rubche kewa da gaba ma ba paradi de ne ba jor dene yo mares 다 랑공원에 깨와당 깨와메바 가바메바 네바메바 숨디 다 랑공원에 마로 상신 오직레스 오직레스 어디레다 디스 공고레스 그래서 돈이 디 삼다데 돈이 소와 라나메스 데네 돈바니 삼다다데스 공고레스
Let's look at the term illusory appearances. So this is going to relate back to what we looked at yesterday or the day before, maybe the day before, when in the main body, in the first point, we spoke about all phenomena, and then in the fifth point, there was a reference to illusions. Any phenomenon, any object of thought, it appears to us as if it exists by way of its own nature. But when we investigate, we come to recognize it is empty of existing by way of its own nature, but is rather merely labeled by mind, and therefore can be likened to a dream or an illusion. So that's the 5-step meditation. So the term illusory appearances relates to every appearance we have to consciousness, so any phenomenon that appears to our mind. In other words, whatever we are thinking about, what we think about appears to our mind. It is like an illusion, in that it does not exist in the way that it appears, just like an illusion. So by meditating on all phenomena as being as not existing in the way that they appear, and you go through the 5 steps, you recognize they are like illusions. So this is the meaning of illusory appearances. Then the actual meaning of this term here, 4 kayas or 4 bodies of the Buddha, is that by meditating on the 4 kayas, by meditating on the wisdom realizing, by meditating on emptiness, the wisdom that realizes emptiness conjoined with bodhicitta, that is what will lead to the result of that you as the practitioner arising as the 4 kayas, as the 4 bodies of the Buddha. So that then is the meaning. The commentaries then present another meaning, present the 4 kayas in a differing way, which I'll mention, but it comes down to what has been said thus far. So what will be said now is maybe will not arise to the mind so clearly, but the meaning is what has been said here. So the 4 kayas, the Dharmakaya or the truth body, this is said to be unproduced. The Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body, this is unceasing. And the Namanakaya, the emanation body, is not abiding. So first then, just to say these 3 terms, not produced, or can be translated as not arisen, or we had it, in other traditions they use unborn. So the Dharmakaya is unborn, or not arisen, not produced. Then the Namanakaya is not abiding, and the Sambhogakaya never ceases. So this is in relation to whether phenomena arise, abide, and cease by way of their own nature or not. And the realization that they do not arise by way of their own nature, but are empty of arising by way of their own nature. They do not abide by way of their own nature, but are empty of abiding by their own nature, and they do not cease by way of their own nature, but they do not cease by way of their own nature, they are empty of ceasing by way of their own nature, but all three processes are merely dependent arisings. This is the realization of emptiness, and in this way, the realization of emptiness is related to the bodies of a Buddha. Again, with the Dharmakaya being unproduced, the Sambhogakaya, or the Nirmanakaya being not abiding, and the Sambhogakaya not ceasing. The bodies of the Buddha are not of three distinct entities, but they are all of the same essence. They are all empty of inherent existence.
Kushi komya di kushi tobegi sanji ye da kushi de sanji gyulu ma to yo ma re ngo ni ko yi chu long ko zhu ko se de sanji gyulu yo re je sa mo ba ni di tobya le ya ngo ni ko tobegi gyu zo de ane chego da ngo ni chego tobegi ngo ni ko de shi chu toye long ko se da de ni to yu de dong ba ni ko ba le de ne to ko ko re je sa de ne za da dong kushi se mingi ko don da la chik ba ring bu le se ba ina mo ba ne ku kushi tobegi yu 동반이 공고래 사실라고 하다는데
So this should be understood that if one was to the author was to write this in a more expansive way, would have said something along the lines of the resultant four bodies, the resultant four kayas come about independent on the wisdom realizing emptiness conjoined with bodhicitta. So that would have been a different way to explain it. So that's the meaning. Because only the Buddhas have the four kayas, the four bodies. So only Buddhas have the four bodies. So the way one achieves them is by meditating on illusory appearances, and in this way, by realizing emptiness conjoined with bodhicitta, one will attain the four kayas.
네 문제게 제시 잡다데 된대래 지나양 지게 야 가시게 될야 안에 추고세야디 랑신이 깨워 랑게 셈 랑신이 깨워 매봐 그런 안에 추고를 해야지 뭐니 추고원을 야샤신 저와 잡다 유유래 맞아요. 당연주게 저와 잡다데 추고원을 제공 구시 곰세야디 구시 토비의 유 동반이 공고 동이 도별 로들이 제자 동반이데 동반이 공고를 세송 거래. 구시문이랑 삼다제 제시가 유유래제 아직 거기서 열에서는 제시가 유유래서 왔다네. 이 열에서 때 타지고 마다 유유래서 그래서 랑기 문이 랑신이 마주바디 아니 최고래서는 제시 잡제 두세네 제시 능해 유유래서 다시 시가와 시가라 열에서야지 최고다 랑신이 깨와 매봐 랑신이 각바 매봐 랑신이 발내 봐도 열어와다 제가 니 구시 롱궁은에랑 민다제 제시자야지 고순낭아 유유래서 제가 만족이 제시가야지 나 구시 문에를 맞춰지 구시 토비의 유 동반이 공발할 때네 공고래서야지 순고래서 제시가고래서.
As I mentioned previously, in condensed texts like this, the commentaries can vary quite a bit. So I've explained one way that this is that this point is presented. Other traditions present it differently. They will say that the four bodies of a Buddha abide within each person, and they will. So the way they express this is different from how I've just expressed it, but the meaning comes down to the same in that. The other explanation would say, because the mind is empty of true existence, therefore the four kayas already exist within beings with mind, all beings with mind. So that is a way that it's presented in some traditions. Here, though, it's more presented in terms of a potential. So through realizing emptiness, conjoined with bodhicitta, those the four kayas will be achieved, as opposed to saying they will be revealed because they're already there. So it's a different way of expressing it, and some commentaries will present it like that. The meaning between these different approaches really is a way of expressing, a way of describing. The meaning is identical.
Lamsa dunga deji showe deji sheba naji susu ne na za kanga de semma kiba cha ta shengi nyoba ki de semma kiba cha kanga de khoro la ya da la so ba de yungo ro ba da da de ne yo be ge de ne ge kanga de se ge tablam la an gar shi ro sen de ne ge kanga le yo du lamsa o de so cha sang lo chu wa la na zam ma do khoro ngo ga ne stu shan la ma de ba rang ngwe ne du be li du du min che ba che yo du de sa de ne ge kanga de yo lo la nang zam ma do ngola kanglai ma da rang ngoi ni drup du ba jewa de zawa ki ni mindu se be ge du go me de tongba ni go me cha chesa da de ni gi jin de ge pa gan jin gen de ge pa ga ru wo de ne yu dan jin xian ji le de ne ga ba ma da rang ngoi ne ga ba de mindu se tong sa tong ba sam da de da de ne ane de ni gi ne ba jo re be se ne gang a de ge de yo ne ba de yong ru ba yi ne 강라에 마도 랑 원이 줍제 내대 바제 민두 제 바르도 내봐 민두 제 데네 삼다 제자다 동반이 삼 제자 데네 삼다에도 강라에 깨와 매봐 데네기 되게 랑zam마도 강라에 깨와 민두 랑원에 깨와 민두 랑원에 가봐 민두 랑원에 내봐 민두 더나 삼다나 강야 매봐 랑원에 줍어 싸우기네 매봐 오 집어 제도와 선병 싸우기네 민두와 선배 삼다 고묘도 동반이 공부하대 동반이 공부 제가 동반이 공부 삼당여도 이 동이도 별로디 타바 탑제 캠프 고바도 베타 규르고래 제가 디니 강한 체디 갑라 동아당 아니 마기바 셈 강한 체기 콩로 파 계게 잡라 디니기 동반이 삼당 공연도 삼당여도 아니 동반이 공연고 제가 디니자 디니기 강한 체비기 제 디니 뇌주기 돈에 강한 레디 레디 dine sosolya kanga ji samlo di kibi tsabla dima kiwa che di tsabla ane kanga ma do rang wone de zawa gi ni mindu sebe ge samlo di tongbo ye sam tang yu nyomo be nyembo gom nyembo di ki sam tang go de nyem yu de ane san ji ko ba de be gyu cha go re je za di za yin ye dong ni kong be tuan ne jin ye lam jia ju lam de gyu wa se de din di sung go re.
To take this fourth sub-point and relate it to the third of the 7 points, so how emptiness, or the wisdom understanding emptiness, is utilized to transform adversity into the path. We take illustrations that have been mentioned earlier, whether illness or harm from others, the way they act or the way they speak to us. So in your meditation, you take these real-life examples for you, and you recognize that this adverse circumstance has come about independent on causes and conditions. Therefore, the way that it appears to my mind, are we going back a lot to what we spoke about 2 days ago? The way that it appears to my mind as independent, it cannot exist in this way. Independent, self-existent, truly existent, cannot exist in this way because it's come about independent on many causes and conditions. Therefore, it is empty of existing in the way that it appears. It is like an illusion. But, and if you're thinking of past events, when you got upset, for example, because I believed that this person was like that, or the words they were saying was like this. In other words, that things weren't like an illusion, that they were real, they were true, truly existent. Therefore, I experienced suffering. I didn't experience this angry person with a red face, their harsh words. I didn't experience any of that as being just like the appearances in a dream, but I took them to be real. I took their motivation to be real. And therefore, I suffered. Now, by preparing myself for the future, again, we in our meditation, I will recognize that whatever appears to my mind, what people are doing, what people are saying, what I'm encountering, whatever it may be, the way it appears is like an illusion, in that it's come about in dependence on a wide number of causes and conditions, like illusions do, but it does not exist in the way that it appears, just like an illusion. It is empty of existing by way of its own nature, or truly. This then is the understanding of emptiness, which is the supreme or the unsurpassed protection from suffering. Then in one's meditation, now linking it further to the more detailed explanation relating to the bodies of a Buddha, whatever it is that one's taking, illness, harm from others, in the various processes of arisal, abiding, and ceasing, none of these exist by way of their own nature. This entire process is empty of inherent existence. Nowhere in the entire process that led to this encounter, this appearance to my mind, none of these causes, not the perpetrator, not the words, none of it exists by way of its own nature. It is all empty of existing in this way, and therefore is like a dream, it's like an illusion, and therefore can do me no harm. Their words, their action can do me no harm, because I'm protected by my understanding of emptiness. And therefore, not taking what appears to one's mind as real or true, but rather realizing emptiness, one is transforming this adverse circumstance into the path to enlightenment, creating causes for Buddhahood.
Okay,
thank you. Then we can conclude there. Thank you. We can conclude there for this afternoon. Thank you.